Season 2, Episode 7 of the Decoded Podcast. And I better welcome Chris properly, or else I'm going to pay for it. Good morning, Chris.
Morning, man. Morning, man. I'm not a fan of Chrome. I'm not a fan of Apple this morning. I'm just going to throw that one down because that was my whole 20 minutes late to the table thing.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to let you have that. But I have to say, I'm going to let you take over in a second and talk about how you might describe today's on-ramp.
Okay.
Because actually, now that I'm looking at you, the toque is on like it's the middle of the night. The beard is coming in. Like it looks like we're up in the middle of the night. So go ahead, describe it for the peeps.
Oh, so on-ramp sharing time? All right. Well, okay, let's address the toque. It's kind of cold in the basement. It's cold in the basement this morning. Yeah, it is. It's cold in the basement. So that's all that one is. I will agree, concur. I have let my my beard get the better of me. So it's coming in. It's kind of like, it's funny. I wouldn't have thought that I was at this age like patchy beard guy, but I got some patches going on there. I'm gonna have to do like the comb over on one spot back here. I don't know what's going on. Sort of feeling low, see if I've got a scar there or something that scar tissue doesn't go through. But anyways, overcompensating. So the on-ramp. All I'll say, so here was the lead. Here's part of the lead, just to sort of, I don't want to set up too bold of a theme, but for anyone that's ever had what's a good way to do this? I don't have a good way to set this one up. Okay, so part of the lead this morning in the on-ramp was talking about kind of forgetting and remembering who you are, and these moments in life that give us the little sort of like poke in the ribs and say, hey, you're not that guy anymore, or hey, remember you were that guy. So the example this morning was just talking about my family were looking after some dogs for a friend, and we were a dog owners, a dog family up to this past summer. Our dog passed, and so we've gone 3 months without. We've had hamsters in the house, but to have the dog is kind of like it's like the lazy uncle, kind of living in your house, but you got to do everything for him. And every time you do, you're like, oh, why can't you just do this for yourself? So the whole getting up in the morning, that's a really bad example, but that's what came to mind. So getting up in the morning, taking the dog out, putting the dog food down, going for the walk. Now, here's the thing. I'm not hating on dogs. Really loved having a dog, but I realized as I'm getting up in the morning and having to take out dogs again, that I think I may have shifted. I don't know if right now I'm still a dog person. I just don't know if I'm a dog owner person. So that was the spirit of it. And then I shaped it as something else. I started to put in some bad words and talking about trying to epitomize what that is. And maybe we'll get to that. But talking about, first and foremost, being challenged with when you realize you may or may not be the person you think you are. God, I just made this like bigger than one podcast with that one statement. And then the second part, just thinking about what goes along when you sort of realize that. So the whole thing about having a dog is like, yeah, you got to clean up after the dog. You got to feed the dog. You have to bathe the dog. You have to walk the dog. And all that stuff is great as long as it's great. I just, for me right now, I don't know if I'm a dog owner person. Anymore. Yeah, there's the setup. Knock it out of the park, shift it sideways, go whatever direction you want.
I'm going to throw in the part about, it ended with you saying that the two of us talking in the way that I had maneuvered was almost like two old dudes talking at 2 a.m, incoherent, obviously tired, and
maybe leaving the pub. Do we throw in the leaving the pub? I think that's almost like a necessary little bit. Leaving the pub or leaving the social, whatever that is. So
two old dudes talking in the middle of the night. That was it. Okay. Speaking of middle of the night.
Okay.
This last week, I went for 2 days and one night on a retreat with the grade 8 students. And it's fitting that we talk about the middle of the night because I know this is going to be a disjointed type of thing that I'm doing, but on Thursday night / Friday morning, the boys in one of the dorm rooms decided they weren't going to go to sleep. And so all through the night, so they lights out at 10:45. Everything's quiet at 11. So me and the other male staff member who were there that night, Mr. Shanahan, child and youth care worker, major props to him. Great guy, young too. Like I'm like, dude, you're so young. Every time he'd say something, I'm like, you're just a kid. We went and we met up with the female staff member and the two people at the retreat that were kind of running it for us. So we meet up to kind of debrief. 11:15, we hear noises, so we go back. The boys are causing some difficulty. Give them the gears, go back to the staff room, yada, yada, yada. It ends with 2 o'clock in the morning is when I'm kind of laying down in bed thinking I got to be up at, 5:30 or 6. And I can't really sleep because I'm in a bed that's foreign to me. I have my pillows, which is like a godsend, but it's not going to happen. I'm not going to get a good night's rest. And I kind of already knew that going in. That's like the tradition of this place, Mount Mary. There's always one night where the teachers don't sleep because they can't. The boys or the girls are causing a ruckus. So I think the best quote of the couple of days that I was there was, I'm laying in bed and I kind of open my eyes and I think I'm dreaming because I can hear young people yelling and screaming. So I grab my phone and it says, 4:50 a.m. I'm like, well, it's got to be part of my dream because it's 4:50 a.m. So I close my eyes and I keep hearing it. So I open my eyes and I'm like, okay, I'm not dreaming, I'm awake. So I get out of bed, come out of my room, and the dorm room right beside me, the door's closed and the lights are on inside the room. It's like 4:50 a.m. So I go to open the door, it's locked. So I bang on the door, I'm like, open the door. The door opens, all the boys in the room are wide awake. And one of them says to me, yo, bro, you still awake? So I fake it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm awake. What are you guys doing? Turn off the lights, get in your bed, leave the door open. Okay, bro, they say to me. I'm like, okay. Lights go off, doors open, go back into my room. It's like 5 a.m. I usually wake up at 5:30. 5:10, now my door's open. 5:10, I see this bright light. Go out there, the door's closed again, the light's on. I open the door, guys, I don't think you understand. They're looking at me, bro, what's wrong? Some of them called me bro. They're like, bro, what's wrong? And I'm like, you're gonna wake up everybody here. You guys are gonna have like a monster of a problem on your hands. So you think I'm being bad here, but what I'm doing is trying to save you because you guys are going down the wrong road. They're like, okay, bro, turn off the lights. I go shower because I'm awake. And at this point, I'm not trying to be quiet. Like I'm showering, I'm brushing my teeth. You can hear it. Like whatever, you didn't let me sleep, so I guess you're not. So long story short, it's 7 a.m. is the wake-up call. 6:45, Mr. Shanahan comes walking down the hall. He's like wide awake, ready to rock. We'd play loud music, open all the doors, turn on all the lights, get up at 7 a.m. Nobody's moving. I'm like, yo, bros, it's time to wake up. You guys decided not to sleep. Now you got to pay for it. Like, we got to get up. So it ended up going south fast. They got in trouble from the people that run the place. We went to the chapel for a get together, and then the girls went to eat breakfast. We had to come back because our dorm rooms were just horrendous. Now I'm giving you like the worst part of the 2 days, but it's the funniest part of the 2 days because I can't believe, like I've been there many times with grade 8 boys, and it's always ever been a problem on the front end of the night. Like they finally hit the sack at 2, they sleep right to 7. This group, was like up at different points in the night, because then one of the organizers came in to see how I was doing and said they woke him up at 3:30 a.m. So they were doing something. I didn't even hear them. I guess I was totally knocked out at 3:30 a.m. that I didn't hear it. So they woke him up at 3:30. So we have evidence from different staff members that they were up throughout the night doing whatever, and I just happened to miss. I happened to miss a couple of them because I was actually sleeping. So anyway, I had to tell that story because it's a good one, and it just goes with the tradition of the place. But I really, going there knowing that I was going to be supervising these boys and girls, I totally went in knowing that I was going to take advantage of the retreat, that I was also going to go on retreat. You know, aside from my supervision duty, I was going to retreat. It's not like I was going to sit there and listen to people meditate with these kids and not go there with them. I was totally going there. We went on a hike. I got some video of me at the waterfall talking about life and the waterfall, which is cool. I hope that gets uploaded soon. And like just being with these kids and listening to them and being part of this experience of stepping away from the world and of all the things that happen day to day that stress you out or that weigh heavy on your shoulders. I was literally able to take that and just put it aside for a couple of days. And it was a real honor to be with them. Like they don't know me and I don't know them. So we got to know each other. That was cool. It was cool to listen to these kids talk about life and the world from their perspective. And they challenged me a couple of times. Like we had these moments where we would go deep and we would talk. I would lead like a group session around these questions that we would ask them. And they went deep. Like one of the questions was, what's a misconception that you feel that older people have about you? And they just went nuts with that question. Like that led to 20 minutes of conversation because they really feel like we, the adults, do not give them any respect and they feel like they deserve some. And so I listened to them and I honored what they had to say and I gave them my perspective. Like it was awesome because you could see at that moment, you could see the connection, you could see the respect on both ends because I truly understood what they were saying. I get it because I've been there. But I also said to them, listen, if you guys are going to walk around acting a certain way, there are consequences for that. You're going to be treated. Like I told them, for me, I'm going to treat you how you show me you need to be treated. So I'm always going to look first. I'm going to see what you're doing. And if you're doing something honorable and respectful, then you're going to get nothing but respect from me. But if you're acting like a doofus in front of my young students and you're modeling something very poor for them, then you're going to hear about it. So you're going to show me how to treat you. And they're like, yeah, not all teachers are like that. I said, not all of you are like that either. So like whatever you say to me can be said right back to you. So let's stop with the back and forth. Let's just talk about being good humans for a second. Let's talk about you being, preteens, what that looks like, what that means. Let's look at my responsibilities as an educator and what that means. Let's look at why your parents send you to school. So I said to them, I get where you're coming from. I said, this is a teachable moment for you. Look at all the layers. It's not just you. There's lots of people involved. There's lots of layers involved. So at the end of something like that, you can't help but feel a connection, a rapport, a respect. And at the end of that, I told them, I said, my respect for all of you has just like jumped tenfold because of our conversation. Because I know now that you can go deep. And so when I see you at school, I expect to see more of the positive side of you. Not only because I see it here, but because I work with younger students. And you, unfortunately, are the leaders of the school, whether you like it or not. And so you need to lead. Sure, you can have your fun times and your joking times, but don't forget, when you're outside with the whole school, you're still students at the school. But the kids are watching you. So just remember that. Anyway, it was great to be away for a couple of days in terms of if I had to go and help, then I was going to help, but I was also going to experience. I was going to soak up that experience, and I got to do both, and it was awesome.
That's cool. I was just talking with a colleague this week that I've never organized a field trip. Like I've never in 14 years, I've never sort of had that idea within my I guess within my teaching, within my pedagogy, where I thought, yeah, you know what, I'm going to design a field trip around this and then take the kids on a field trip. Never done it. I've been a part of sports teams where, I mean, you go and you're playing games at different schools and doing all that kind of stuff, which are, you know, you kind of go through a series of mini field trips, and often the paperwork is very similar for the most part. But I've never organized a field trip myself. That's what you had me thinking about that. And I'm not quite sure why. I love how what I loved hearing in what you were saying was that part of your intent, apart from the supervisory role, was to experience this retreat with the same authenticity that you would be hoping your kids would too. So sort of connecting with that, with the resources and the activities and the thinking and exploration that the space offers. I think that's a fleeting kind of concept when you are the adult in the room. That idea of having to be able to enjoy it at a naturally connecting level without having to, you know, like, where's Joe? Oh, where did those kids go right now? Oh, you know, does everybody have their backpack? Like being able to sort of exist in that pure space is really, really challenging. 2 years ago, well, it's even longer than that now. It was 3 years ago, might even been 4 years ago. In the spring, I was asked to be a chaperone to go along on a music trip. I guess I was the male chaperone of the two teachers, and it was to Europe, and it was Austria and Italy. And it was funny, like, you know, it was a well-organized trip. It was the type of trip that was done through a company. So the whole list of activities was all laid out for us. Everything, there was no decisions to make other than get on the bus, be at this place, you know, kind of move on. It was a very good, very, very good trip. And you know, I think there's a quick, when you're assessing what makes a good field trip, I think the first thing that pops to mind is you say that the kids had a good time and they were well behaved. I think in a secondary, maybe this primary too, I think it's did the teachers enjoy themselves? Sorry, did the adults enjoy themselves? And did they get to have an experience? Did they get an experience where they felt like they kind of connected and that they went deep? And I don't know if those kind of conversations happen. I will say that the adults that went on this extended field trip, we were having constant conversations while we were there just about how responsible and how kind the students were, and how interested and curious they were, and how they were engaging in the culture and taking positive risk to try new things and to talk to people and to kind of immerse themselves in the culture. But we didn't really have much debrief after that. I don't know if we spent as much time analyzing the kids' experience. Sorry, I don't think we spent as much time we didn't spend as much time analyzing our own positive experience without bringing the kids into it. And that's a parenting thing too. Let's be honest. The activities that we sort of help our kids be a part of, there's a whole lot of that's logistical and coordinated and transportation, and does everybody have their lunch? But I also like to have that other conversation is, you know, did the adults have a good time? It sounds like you did.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. Like, and there's some inside jokes, obviously, which are not going to come out here. But between me and Mr. Shanahan and the grade 8 teacher, And the other grade 3 teacher that was there, he was there for 2 days and one night. He did the first night, I did the second. But when I got there the second day, so him and I got to overlap our time together, and we're good friends. So it was cool to hang out with him. But between the four of us, we've got some great one-liners. And my principal emailed all of us yesterday morning and said, "Thanks for going. I haven't heard from you guys, so I'm assuming everything went well. But if there's anything I need to deal with, just let me know. And I totally appreciate your time. And thanks for doing this for the kids." And I was like, I looked at my phone. I was like, I need to respond. And I need to say something that he won't get, but everybody else will. But then I held off. I'm like, no, I got things to do. So I put it down. Then a few hours later, the grade 8 teacher responded and said, thanks for letting us go. And, Roland might have something to say. And then there was like ... LOL. And then she called me bro, and she signed off on the email. So I'm not sure how deep that rabbit hole I should go with my principal, but needless to say, like, even I recognized while the boys were causing this kind of chaos in the middle of the night, thought, well, like the way that they dealt with me and the way that they dealt with the problem, I don't even want to call it a problem. They were being kids, right? They're being kids who probably have never been away from home for this long, and they're with their buddies in the same dorm room. Like, you gotta expect, at least I do, I expect some of the shenanigans. I think if they really pushed me, they would have ended up sleeping in the hallway or in the gym, which is right next door, because that's like a strategy we use. Or I would have just pulled my bed out of my room and put it right in the hallway in front of their door, and I would have slept there. But it didn't get to that. Maybe I should have done that at 2 a.m, but you live and you learn. I've never had to do that before. I've had kids sleep in the hallway, but I've never had to sleep out in the hallway. So should anybody be spoken to, maybe the principal should tell them, listen, Mr. C was there out of the goodness of his heart, and you guys didn't let him sleep or any of the other guys sleep. That's not cool. Maybe they need to hear that so they could be like, oh yeah, we should have thought about other people. I don't know. I'll tell him my experience, and I will add some of the funny things from it, but do I expect the principal to do anything? No, I don't expect anything. But anyway, it was the first time I went, which was like 16 years ago. I was in teacher mode. So when I was there, the grade 8 teacher would say, okay, Roland, can you run this exercise, or can you supervise this exercise over here while I do this over here? And I'm like, yeah, of course. What do you want me to do? And she's like, I thought you'd been here before. I'm like, I have. She's like, you don't know that activity? I said, no, because the last time they did that activity, I was in teacher mode. I was the grade 8 teacher. And so I was too busy disciplining kids and making sure this was happening. So I never got to see the activity. And she just looked at me dumbfounded. Like, this is like the activity at this retreat. And I'm like, I never got to see it. I was in a detention room or something. I'm serious. We had a detention room the first year I went, because these kids just couldn't keep it together.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. And we had to send a couple of kids home in the middle of the night because they just couldn't handle it either. So I was like, no, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I hope, like, I came out of this enjoying myself and really tired, but I hope that I was able to serve the way that they expected me to. And I'll find out, I guess, if I get invited back next year or not. But no, it was at the forefront. I was like, okay, I'm going to this thing, and I'm gonna miss my family. And my son had hockey, and I missed it. And I don't really miss, like, I take it seriously. Like, I take my kids to where they need to be, and I watch them and I try to support them. So I was saddened by that. So I'm like, okay, I'm making these sacrifices. So I'm going to go and I'm going to supervise. But when I can immerse myself in the retreat, I'm immersing myself in the retreat. And it was awesome. It was awesome, right? Like, if I'm going to give up this stuff at home, there has to be a plus for me somewhere. And the plus was getting to know these kids that I would never really get to know, and to immerse myself in a religious retreat, that I feel good coming back. I feel like I've learned some more about me. You and I were talking about that on the on-ramp,
Hmm.
about kind of how I'm feeling right now. And I can't wait to get back to my students and to talk to them about my experience and to pump it up for them. So when they get to grade 8, they're looking forward to this journey, this adventure.
Right. The it's funny you talk about when I was I think it was on my grade 8 trip. I was sent home from it.
Why?
um
Or
it,
maybe you don't want to say.
no, I totally can say it's funny, like I try and kind of grab the whole story, and I don't think I have the whole story. I have snippets. Here's the snippets. See if your brain will sort of just string it together. So here are the snippets. Um, and from a kid's point of view. So I remember. I don't know. Should I do it in a reverse chronological order or do it in? I'll do it. I'll do it in forward chronological order.
Let your creativity
Let
flow.
my creativity flow. Okay, so I remember driving. I remember being on the bus going to this trip and thinking to myself, um, this was it, that I was missing school. So that was cool. I had this whole idea of just it. And I think in sort of the drive there was long enough that not only did I feel like that it reinforced that idea of missing school, like not, I think it actually created a distance from my student side. Like we were driving long enough and we were being silly enough on the bus that I completely let go of whatever would be the kind of, I guess, the control structures that school automatically does. I mean, when you're bound by the bells and you're shuffling along the halls and you're going into a class. So it was funny at some point, when we're being loud on the bus, the one of the teachers saying, trying to calm us by saying that you're on a school trip. It didn't work because none of us felt like we weren't at school anymore. So that was probably the beginning of the end for me at that point. And we're not even it's a Bark Lake. Props to Bark Lake. You run a tight, awesome program there, but that's where we went. I don't know where it is, to be honest, but Bark Lake is where we were going. So, and at the time I was in Catholic elementary school. So I'm guessing that I think that there was some sort of an eco theme to it. I'm imagining there was some religious connection to it. But again, so we're on the bus, long enough drive that we're already letting go of our student side. So we get there, and I remember, so after 2 hours or whatever amount of driving we did, all the organization, there was still a lot of standing around because then you have to get organized and you have to get to your cabin and you have to take your stuff to your cabin. And then there's all the, all that sort of like pre-logistical thing. So there's nothing on the horizon that's actually of all that much interest. So we're sort of into the sort of like the 4th hour of confusing distance. You mentioned it, away from parents, learning to kind of be, who we are with just our buddies. So we're standing around waiting for the next thing to be done. And we went from off the bus, organization, stuff to cabin, and every single one of these was a fight because we're sort of like, okay, now we're in the cabin, we want to stay in the cabin. Okay, now that we're out walking, we want to stay walking. Like there was never, I can't imagine how hard it was for my teachers. Like we never wanted to transition. We wanted to keep doing what we were doing, but it wasn't what we were actually doing. It was in those moments where let's say we're walking to the cafeteria, like the food cabin, eating the mess hall, that you didn't want to arrive at the mess hall. You're actually looking forward to more just hanging with your buddies. So before we actually got to eat, and by this point, we left mid-afternoon. So we kind of traveled just after lunch, got there. We're going to be having dinner there, but we hadn't had dinner yet. So dinner was still pushed off to like 7:00, 7:30. So then we had the safety meeting. So everyone was brought to the center of the camp and they ran through the sort of the rules of engagement to be at a camp. They did a whole lot of, your instructors, your teachers know that you could be sent home. Like they kind of did the whole things, which at this point, again, me and my buddies, other friends were kind of like, okay, this is all right. When are we going to get to eat? We're not queuing into it whatsoever. So we go to dinner. I have no memories of dinner. I just remember the order of operation. So then we do dinner. And then that night, we were then sent to our cabins. Now, we hadn't actually unpacked yet. There was no unpacking. So we're sort of spending time unpacking, setting ourselves up, and then it's lights out. So at some point in the night, my buddy Mike wakes me up and he says, let's go explore. I'm like, all right. So we get up, we get out of our cabin, we decide to go exploring. So we're walking through, and really when I say night, like it was probably 10 p.m., but it was after lights out, right? There was still spots of lights on, and we could hear some prep kind of going on. I'm sure they were closing down the mess hall and setting up for breakfast because, like you were saying, breakfast is an early call. Like it was 7 a.m. or something like that. So we decided to go for a hike, which then turned into a round of hide and seek. And then we got a few more people up, and we're sort of running through the camp at nighttime, just having some fun. Now, nothing destructive, nothing mean or cruel. We're just running, like literally running around the place, like to explore. We didn't go in the water. At some point, we end up near the center of the camp. And at the center of the camp, dead center, is this massive bell, just on a yoke. It's just hanging there, and it is the when we're all called to the center, everyone would sort of be called around this thing. But they also had mentioned that this is the fire bell. So this is the thing that activates the fire alarm at the camp. So I don't know how the leveling up to this, but as we're running around, at some point, my buddy Mike is running close to the bell, but not hitting the bell. And then he's jumping and he's sort of hitting the top part of the yoke that it's hanging on, because it's like it was hanging about like a good 7 feet off the ground. Like it's a big metal bell. And there was a few of us doing that. And then at some point I make it through. I'm sort of standing on the other side, but I haven't turned yet. And one of the people behind, I hear dong, like I heard like the clang of the bell, and it was loud. And I turn around and stop. And it's one of those moments, maybe you remember it as a kid, maybe you've seen it in your students' faces, when you just have that good keyword, or sometimes you get frustrated in class, you just have to blast with a be quiet in here, and you just happen to get the right tone, the right volume, and people just kind of stare at you wide-eyed, like, what have you done? Some classes, they can do it nicely with the chime, or they can sort of flick the lights off and on, or when my hand's up, it means stop. Like you can do all these other cues, but that bell just stopped us. We all stood there, and of course, it's kind of reverberating a little bit, and all of us are like, insert some swear words. What have you done? Who did that? Who hit? No one's admitting to it, but someone in the process of running beside the bell or under it jumped up and actually hit the bell. Not I don't even know the pieces of the bell, but not the rope underneath, but because they hit the bell, it swung. And then the inside, what's that even called? Do you know? What's the thing inside the ringer? The ringer on the rope? It's a giant like metal ball on a rope that you could just like swing it and you bang the inside of the bell. I almost feel like I should know what that's called. But anyways, so the bell rang twice, a really loud one and then a more quiet one. And we all stopped. And then of course, we see the lights popping on. Pop, 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 pop. Because someone in our group has just rung the fire bell. We all run back to our cabins, like triple, quadruple times. So fast, so fast. We're stumbling, tripping over roots. We must have looked like just wild animals trying to make it back. We get back into our cabins, we lay back down, and we're all like catching our breath, hearts pounding. We're like, okay, maybe this will pass, maybe this will pass, maybe this will pass. Then we can hear movement outside. Moving outside, we can see the flashlights coming on, and then the door to the cabin opens. And when the door to the cabin opens, I'm right. So when you open when you open the cabin, so when you open the door to the cabin, right at the back wall, there's a set of bunks, and then there's bunks on either side. So when the door opens up, there's a flashlight right in the cabin, and it's directly right in mine and my buddy's faces, like at the end of the cabin. And the first thing the teacher says is, "You guys are being loud," because we were still like chitter, chitter, chitter. And at this point, no one really knows who rung the bell, but they're kind of going cabin to cabin. "You guys are being too loud. You need to go to sleep. You need to get some shut eye." To which I say, "I can't fall asleep. There's a flashlight in my eyes." Not a good play. So at that, yeah. So at that point, so there's no suspects yet. It's just, "Clough, get out here." I'm like, oh. At which point I stand up. "Oh, Mr. LaRochelle. Mr. LaRochelle?" I think it was Mr. LaRochelle. At which point Mr. LaRochelle says, "Why are you still wearing your clothes?" I'm like, oh. So Mr. LaRochelle stays a little bit longer. He's like, "Okay, boys, lights on, get up." So there's like 3 of us in there still wearing our clothes. Because like I said, we just ran back in and laid down and got under the covers and thought, hopefully this will pass. "Come on out." And at that point, he's on the radio. He's like, "Okay," kind of walks off to the side on the radio. So we know he's on the radio. I measure now what was happening was he was sort of saying, "Okay, cabin check for the boys, check to see if anyone's still wearing their clothes." Because now he's connecting dots that anyone that's still wearing the clothes probably was just out messing around, or messing around in general. So as it played out, we were all mustered from our cabins. And then it was funny. They didn't have a detention room at this camp, but it's almost like they had individual meeting rooms. Now, thinking back, what they probably were small classrooms, or even small, and again, this is where I go, like small lab spaces, but they had each of us in one, like these holding rooms. And I can remember LaRochelle coming in and out and sort of talking and then leaving. And I guess at the time, what they were trying to do was phone our parents. They couldn't get in touch. They couldn't get in touch with our parents. So the way it worked out was, I actually have no idea how there was 5 of us in total. I don't know how they did this, because you generally don't have 5 supervisors that you can send home at any one time. Like it sometimes clears out your whole adult content. What I do know is that Mike and I were put in the back of LaRochelle's truck. He drove us back, and I can remember so clearly they still hadn't gotten in touch with our parents. And I don't know how that would be. Maybe it was the phone line there. Like, we're going back, this is 1984. So everything's landlines. 1984, yeah, because I started high school in 85. So I can remember stopping. At this point, it's probably 6 a.m. in the morning. So we stopped at like this kind of backwoods convenience store that had a payphone. And I can remember Mike and I sitting in the back of the truck, laughing and crying at the same time. Like we were on borderline crazy. Like, we didn't know how this was going to play out. Mike said something and I started laughing, and then it kind of transitioned from just, I can't believe this is going on, into like tears. I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't know, what are my parents going to, like, this is not going to go well for me. And then, yeah. And then we were dropped off at home. I remember my parents kind of just very long dog look on their face. Like, what have you done? And to this day, I still don't know, out of the group of friends, because we talked about it afterwards and no one would admit it. No one admit it. Now, what's interesting, it is possible that I clipped the bell as I jumped through. I didn't hit the bell, but as I jumped, I could have like started the motion and then someone else hit it, or it could have just been in hitting the yoke that it rang. So, yeah, I got sent home.
The inside part of the bell is called a clapper.
A clapper, yeah. So this bell, I would say, probably was like half an adult big. Like, it was a big bell, as the fire bell goes, right? So yeah, we low level in some ways. In some ways, low level. No damage caused. Headaches, annoyance. nobody hurt, but I can totally appreciate from a logistical standpoint right now as an adult that there's the equivalent of the fire bell that can always be set off on any trip, and the whole protocol to dealing with it. I don't think that's the thing that's actually kept me from organizing field trips. I am not, no emotions were harmed in the formation of this story. It's just, when I think about, were you one of the organizers or you were a supervisor? Or is this something that is just, it's organized and you go?
The grade 8 teacher organized it with the chaplain that's assigned to our school.
Mm-hmm.
They put together a plan. So we need male supervisors because the grade 8 teacher's female. So we need male supervisors, and I was one of them. They asked me, and I was like, yeah, man, let's do this. Let me make sure it's good with home, and I would love to help. Which is, like, again, I'm going to say this about myself, then I want to get back to you. I'm honored that they asked me to go, because there's a few male staff at school. So, I think my principal was like, no, I think Roland would be a good fit with these kids, and he, you get along with them. And I know the grade 8 teacher, years ago, she came to my classroom for an afternoon to observe how I managed to use Google Apps with grade 2 students. So it's kind of a cool connection. And like I said, my buddy Chris, the other grade 3 teacher, he normally goes for 2 nights, but I think last year he was getting a little tired of it. So they're like, well, let's bring somebody else on. So him and I were able to do like a tag team combo, which was awesome. And then we needed a CYCW because a couple of our students have needs that cannot be ignored, whether, at school or away from school. So they had Mr. Shanahan come to do his thing as a CYCW and to support the kids. It was awesome, and I hope that I get an opportunity to do it again. I appreciate you telling us your story. I'm a little bit baffled because that's the side of you I don't know. That it sounds like, by what you said, it sounds like you kind of got the shaft. But I mean, I wonder if things had changed if you didn't talk back, if you hadn't said, well, I can't sleep, there's a light in my eyes. Because the minute somebody does that to a group of teachers who are stressed out and feeling like heads need to roll, you put your head on the chopping block. Yep. And you know it because you're a teacher, you know
it.
Oh yeah. I don't know what to tell you. It sucks that such an innocent thing sends you packing.
Yeah, well, yeah, part of the herd, right? Getting slammed as part of the herd. And just the way that it played out, being found out because of my big mouth, right? And you know what's funny? It's when I think back on maybe when I think about one of my skills as a I'll say it's not as a teacher, but it's one of my skills of I think just me, human things, not skills, I'll say it's a talent, is making sense of random kind of data points, like kind of noticing something and then creating the sort of like the story or the possibilities around it and kind of holding that little bit. So for example, I totally am the person right now that would have connected dots like that when someone stood up and they were still wearing clothing. Now that's a really obvious one, but that's the kind of stuff that I think as a teacher that I do well, taking into consideration a whole bunch of bits of data, not just the thing that's in front of you, and trying to exist in that big picture, at least for a second before you do the deductive reasoning and bringing it down to something small. Like I really enjoy those moments with students where you can sort of bring to light what might not be necessarily obvious to them. And obviously me in bed, it was not obvious to me that by opening my big mouth that I could, show my guilt. I was just thought I was being kind of yappy and funny with my buddies. Like that's what, and it was a truth. Like the irony was that the flashlight was right in my face. And as the teacher's saying, go to sleep, my brain said, well, here's a great idea. Tell them you can't go to sleep because there's a flashlight in your eyes, right? And of course there were some chuckles in the room, and then it's satisfied and you move on. But obviously in their investigative framework. That was a pretty what shifted from we need to have a side conversation with Clough because he's being disrespectful very quickly turned into that's interesting. Side conversation now shows culpability. So
I love the Clough, you're still wearing your clothes.
yeah.
I love it because there's nothing. I'm going to say it. It's going to sound bad, but there's nothing more fun than catching those little. The kids drop things they shouldn't drop, right? And then when they see you pick it up, they're like, you can see it in their face. They go from "I did nothing wrong" to "Uh-oh," he knows. Yeah, there's something there.
So you mentioned the side, that side, not necessarily knowing that side. There's not a lot of people that know specifically that story. It's a small kind of group of guys, let's say, that would remember that. I never did get to go back to the table and talk about it with La Rochelle, the teacher, because there was an impact to him. He had to drive back home. I don't know if he went back to the camp. Like, I don't know if he drove home, dropped us off, and went back. I really don't know. I have no memory of following. The memory of just being sent home and the whole event is so big that I have no connective tissue to say, yeah, and then I remember all this stuff happened afterwards. It's taken up that much space in my mind. That's the thing. I have no recollection of how it was dealt with afterwards. My parents' standard fare was a grounding. I probably got grounded, to be honest. That's just my memory. They probably said something like, "We're really disappointed in you." But yeah, I have no flow after that. I wish that I could have had the convo with him afterwards as to, what was that like, but what teenager would, but it's, my brain now is curious. My brain now is very curious as to the cost for him, what that was. I also think that I want to, and I wish when I told you my mom was staying with us for a couple of days. I got to make sure I want to start capitalizing on those moments and asking questions of my past. And that's one. That would be a good one. I want from her point of view. I've asked her a couple of times what her observations were of me as a student. And I don't think I've ever gotten really in. I think we've sort of always something has happened and we haven't got the conversation out. But I think I want to chase that one. I want to chase that one a little bit. I think the Bark Lake will probably be a good starting point. We have talked about, and I've talked about this with my students as well, that for me in high school, the school part was like my part-time job. And what I considered to be my real world was going to work at the restaurant. Like that's what I kind of lived for, was to just go and get my shifts at the restaurant, try and get as many shifts as I could. And that school was sort of like I got to go back to school again, in the same way a kid might say, oh, I got to go work at my part-time job on Tuesday night. I'm like, oh, I got to go back to school during the day. I got to chase that one with my mom. I should.
You've mentioned that before, how work at the restaurant was kind of what you were going after. It was your thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, that saddens me a little bit, because when I look at who you are today, I think of I don't see that. I see more of an intellectual chasing an idea or posing questions and then sitting back and figuring out, well, which question do I really want to follow, or which question is going to come at me. It saddens me a little bit because I think my academic side is talking. School is not my forte. I think I mentioned that before. When you're talking to your mom and figuring out, maybe talking about that retreat and her thoughts about it, it reminds me of when my mom told me when I was graduating from high school that our next door neighbor, who's a close friend of the family, had mentioned to my parents somewhere along the way that, she didn't think I was going to graduate from high school, which, excuse me, she didn't even know. She didn't even know. So about my high school experience. So I must have been projecting something about school, or just the way I was at the time, that gave her the idea, this kid's not going to make it out of high school, which really, to this day, has been a motivator for me in a couple of ways. People just never know what you're thinking. right? Like, did your parents know that all you wanted to do was work at the restaurant? Like, was this something that was obvious to everyone that you were verbal about, or was it one of those things where you went to school, you did your time, the day would end, and you'd be pumped, and you'd go to the restaurant, and then come home, sleep, and start over again? Like, or were you walking around saying to your parents, "I hate school. I just want to work in the restaurant"?
No, I don't think I was actively hating on school. I just have a sense that I was tolerating the days that I was in school. I had some instructors that I felt, you know, a good connection to, and I enjoyed. It was fun. There were some courses that I liked, and then there were teachers that I felt a connection to. So I felt course connection, teacher connection, and in some cases they were the same thing. Does that make sense? Like, it was actually the teacher that was teaching the course that I liked them together. But I had individual stuff that there was course spaces that I really enjoyed, but I didn't really feel a connection to the teacher, and vice versa. I tolerated the class because the teacher was kind of cool, but I didn't really like the course and getting the compulsory stuff done. I don't think I was walking around. I wasn't the type to walk around and say I don't want to be here. I demonstrated with my behavior that I was tolerating school. So, for example, you know, if I skipped, I didn't make bones about it. I just, like, if I didn't want to be there, I wouldn't go. I would still get my assignments in, but if I didn't feel like I wanted to be at the school for something, then likely I would have tried to pick up a shift. There wasn't really anything to do in the neighborhood. It was a very urban area that we lived in. So there was no mall. There was no just distraction place that I would go and hang out at. If I wanted to go to an arcade, which was of my interest, I had to go to downtown Oshawa or all the way to the shopping center, which was about a 30-minute bus ride away. So I would just I would get a shift. I would go pick up some work, but I wasn't, I definitely was not sort of like, if someone couldn't find me, they would have assumed that I probably went and picked up a shift in the afternoon. Yeah. Or on the weekend or after school or something like that. I was pretty stable that way. So my little protests were pretty stable. I didn't really have I wasn't going and hanging out, in the woods or in the bush somewhere where everyone was always at play or partying. I didn't really, I didn't really have that element. I wasn't much of a partier, to be honest, in high school. When I think of all whatever was a vice was probably video games and working in the restaurant. That's about it.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting. I should probably just take it for what it is, but it's just cool to hear other people's experiences in high school and what it was like, because I wanted so badly to be good at school and I wasn't. And I wanted to be engaged, but the courses sucked, and the learning that happens in high school isn't the way I learned. So I was basically fighting a system the whole time. But I learned eventually to play the game. I woke up one day and I knew I had to do something. And so I looked at the way high school was, and I looked at it as a game. And I figured out the cheats and the codes, and I did what I had to do. And I got into university. But not everybody's like that either, right? Some kids were just like, whatever, it's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing this. And don't take this the wrong way, but growing up watching my dad and mom have to work so hard to make money, I didn't want that life for me, which is funny because I'm a teacher now and I do work hard and I'm on all the time, but there's stability to my job. Like, I get a paycheck every 2 weeks. I have benefits that I can take care of myself and my family. My parents didn't have that. If my parents wanted money, they had to go and get it. There was no stability. There was no guarantee. There was none of that. There was no benefits. Like, I remember joking with somebody recently. I was talking about going to the dentist. I remember going to the dentist like a few times in my lifetime. And I'm lucky because I didn't have a lot of cavities. So it's not like my parents had to be taking me to the dentist. But I remember when one time my parents pulled me out of school, my sister and I, and we went to the dentist, and they applied some kind of they applied some kind of layer to my teeth, to protect my teeth from cavities, was like an extra protection. And I remember thinking, this is costing my parents a fortune because they have to pay for it out of their pocket. And they're doing something that hopefully is going to save me for years because I didn't go 2 times a year to the dentist. You
Hmm.
know, that's why now it's foreign to me. When the dentist calls and says you're due, I'm like, what? I'll go when I go. And my wife is like, what are you talking about? You're due. And to me, it's foreign because I didn't have that luxury. I didn't have that. Like my kids, they go and they think it's normal. For me, it's not normal because I never had it. So when I realized that I did not want to live the same life as my parents, who came from another country and struggled to make ends meet, I remember, dude, I woke up and I was like, I need to make a plan. I think it was probably the first time in my life where like I took initiative because I had to make something happen. And I just did it. Like I said, I figured out the hacks and the cheat codes because I couldn't do high school the way it was laid out. This business of go to physics class for 80 minutes and then get 10 pages of homework that's due the next day, that doesn't work. I can't do that. I mean, I can now if I need to, but that's not how I learn. I can't do it. Or my brain just doesn't function that way, and I haven't figured out the code to make my brain function that way. So when I hear your story, I feel bad. I feel like, oh my God, here's a kid with all this potential. And there's something about school that's not engaging him, and he'd rather be at the restaurant cleaning dishes or doing whatever you're doing, making cash. I don't know, there's something about that hurts me because of how I grew up, I guess. And it's a battle that there's is happening right now in my household. My kids aren't growing up the way I grew up. And I'm worried that they just don't appreciate, like they don't see any of their life as being tough. Tough for my 12-year-old is the internet's down, he can't play Fortnite, and he has to wait. That's tough for him. My 8-year-old gets upset, when he asks us for sushi at the grocery store. We're like, no, we're gonna go home and make you a sandwich. He gets upset. They don't get how I grew up. They see, oh, mom and dad have jobs, mom and dad have money, we go on vacations, we have cars. Like they don't see the struggle that I saw. So I've had this conversation with my wife. What do we do? How do we show them? How do we make them appreciate what they have? And it's very difficult, I think, and I don't know, I'm learning how to be a parent. It's very difficult to make that happen. I did everything I could so I wouldn't have to struggle. And now my kids don't understand what it means to struggle. It sucks. I don't like that because I worry about their work ethic. I worry that they're going to live in my basement for the rest of their lives. You know?
You going back to what you were saying about the your sense of not doing school how you wanted to do it. I had this sudden image of like Breakfast Club, and somehow you and I in the same detention, philosophically similar, but functionally we'd be there for different reasons, So yeah, I had the sense like being in there, and it also got me thinking. I mean, and you sort of had said this about you're sad for me that, and I still don't, I don't know if I fully understand what kind of bothers you about my disconnect with school. Maybe it's entirely you kind of said it because the potential was there. So were you looking at it as in that for school was barrier free for me to a degree and I wasn't maximizing, or that school didn't reach out well, like it was sort of school wasn't doing a good enough job? I'm just curious, what was your perception there? Are you sort of projecting a little bit as in you felt you had barriers and I didn't? What's the thing there?
I love how you're coming at this. Number one, the school helping you, that's not going to happen. the system is the way it is. There's only one or two teachers in our experiences that are the ones that step up and make things happen. So number one, no, I'm not sad that the school didn't come at you. I am sad because I perceive you as being someone barrier free in terms of learning,
Mm.
and that you didn't take advantage of that. That's me feeling for you like, oh my God, here's a kid with potential that can actually play the game of school,
Mm.
but it's like, I don't want to play. I want to be over there making money. That kills me because if we just stop and think about where I am in time, I'm thinking I'm in the 80s, I'm in the 90s. None of what is happening today is happening then that we can see. The internet is not really, it's not alive really.
Hmm.
Um, it's soon to be birthed, but it's not there. And and the way the world works is still the haves go to university or college and the have-nots don't. That's the general idea that I was getting, the general perception. So for me, based on just things you've told me and my perception of them, you're a have. You had the world in front of you. Um, in my opinion, you could play the game of school and you could survive it and do well, but you chose not to for whatever reasons, which are yours. Whereas I, compared to me, I'm going to school and I'm dying because I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer, but I'm not going anywhere if I can't get out of high school. I feel like the teachers are already against me. My grades are junk. I'm not interested, but yet I'm there trying to do it.
Hmm.
So what I'm doing here is I'm just comparing my experience to yours, and
Hmm.
I'm comparing it to an experience that I don't really know what your experience was. I'm just the way I see you as a type that probably could have done school easily if you wanted to, and I could be wrong. That's just giving you my perception. So that's why I'm sad because you had it there at your hands, and you're like, I don't want this.
Hmm. Yeah, I have a hard time centering myself, let's say emotionally in it. And I only mean in so much as whether, the depth of my feeling about learning. I have a very functional kind of relationship. And again, had an art teacher, was phenomenal, Mr. Fitches. I think he did more for my brain to think about the universe I exist in, not me, what's in the space. He was a phenomenal fella, deep, philosophical, happened to be an art teacher. I had Miss Collins was a writing teacher. So here, now you're starting. So here's seed points, right? And this is the stuff that I took from school when I had to tolerate other things. Miss Collins was an English teacher and drama teacher. Miss Day, another art teacher, and then Mr. Watson, a history teacher. So that's my sort of like collection of, there's my collectibles leaving high school. I can't really remember any of my other teachers' names. Like to this, I can't. I wouldn't be able to conjure. Yeah. And it's that sort of like, let's go the different route. So were you aware, would you have said something, if not the term, would you have said barriers when you were in high school? How would you have articulated what was going on that you couldn't, like if you had a buddy like me and you're watching a buddy like me, leave school to go work a job, have some money and maybe some freedom, I don't know, and then still, hand in an essay, get the level 2, level 3 and seem to be at peace with it. How would you have, and this is going way back, dude, but um, how would you have explained that to yourself? How would you have sort of um, understood that in high school? And I asked that only as much as I knew of a couple of my friends that just, they didn't do school well. Like, and we would kind of call it like, you're dumb. Like, why can't you, why aren't you getting this? Like, you're just harsh as a teenage boy on each other. Right. And then you kind of move on and you get on to the next topic. What was it like in your circle of friends, let's say, when you're observing this phenomenon? Or is it now with the adult brain that you're able to kind of tease it apart?
I was lucky in that I had a a really big circle of friends. So if you look at high school and you divide it up into different cliques, I was able I was able to jump into any of those because I had friends in all the groups. So when I look back, and I could be wrong, I don't know what my friends would say. I had a core group of friends that I would hang with outside of school, but in school, I was taking advanced courses, so I was exposed to a whole other realm of people. So my close friends, were taking general courses, advanced courses, and then I was in all advanced courses. So automatically going to class, I was with one circle of people, and then after school, I was with another circle of people. And I seemed to get along with all the groups. I think I didn't have too many, like if there's somebody I disliked, it wasn't a group that I disliked. I disliked that particular person. So here's kind of how I saw this. The group I was with outside of school, so at hockey or whatever as I got older, they all seemed comfortable in how they were approaching school and life. So if they were in academic courses, they were doing fine. They were getting like level threes and level fours and not really trying. And then I had my other friends who were taking general courses and knew that they were going to college and they were going to study business, or they were going to just do something in general, or police foundations. Like everybody just seemed to know what they were going to do. And they were comfortable, it appeared, with how they were doing in school. Then there's me. So my guidance counselor was like, you're in advanced courses, but you shouldn't be. You should probably be in general courses. My response to that was, well, you've not met my dad. My dad says I'm going to university. I can't get into university with general courses, so I'm taking advanced courses. So there was one, I wouldn't call them barriers, I would just call them, people just didn't seem to understand me. They didn't seem to want to support me blindly. They wanted to look at the facts, and they wanted to use the facts to help guide me, which isn't a bad approach, but sometimes you have to look at the kid in front of you, and you have to look at the dirt in the clouds, and you have to decide where that kid wants to be. And I was living in the clouds. And so what would have benefited me was somebody to tell me, okay, let's do this. You want to go to university, let's make it happen, whether it's true or not. Because what I needed was, I needed an adult to step up. And I had that. I had that with Mr. Martin, Mr. McDonald. Those two guys stepped up, and they're like, you're going to make it. Just hold on and keep going down this road. And they hit me up in grade 12 and 13. So I'm glad they didn't catch me early. They caught me late, and that's when I needed that push. I needed it late, not early. Because early in the game, grade 9 and 10, I was skipping school. I was lying to my parents and to my teachers. I didn't really like my group of friends. I feel like I didn't fit in. So grade 9 and 10 was a huge write-off. Grade 11 was a weird transition year, and then grade 12, I woke up and I'm like, I need to do something with my life. So trying to answer your question, I felt like I was there and I was just fighting an uphill battle every day. And I didn't feel good about myself, but there was something in me that kept me going. Like I would wake up and go to school and be like, I'm screwed today, but I wouldn't let that stop me from going to school. And then when I started to see success working, so what I found was working hard, like sitting down, actually doing the work, whether I was good at it, whether I was succeeding or not, sitting down and just doing it, that action gave me power, because I started to see success in like the social studies courses I was taking, a little bit in the science courses I was taking. And I had gone to summer school, and I'd taken my grade 13 English there, because there was no way the grade 13 English teacher was going to let me do it in her class. I think I've told you that story about grade 12 English, and my grade 12 English teacher said, if I give you a 50, will you promise not to take this with me next year? And I said yes, because, well, I was dumb and young, and she basically said, like, if you don't agree to this deal, you're failing grade 12 English. And I thought, well, I can't go to summer school. I can't go to summer school for grade 12 and 13 English. So I'm like, yeah, give me the 50. And then I'll just go. And I went to, grade 13 summer school, and I got like a 78. And even that teacher, she pulled me aside the second week of school, and she said, Roland, like, why aren't you reading the book? because it was one of those, read the book, read 10 chapters tonight in summer school, and then the next day you're going to do a ton of comprehension questions, and you're going to write an essay, and you're going to present it. So it was like 5 months of school in 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember she pulled me aside. She's like, Roland, why aren't you reading the book? And I said to her, and she was a brand new young teacher. You could tell she probably got hired just for summer school. And I didn't cry, but I was beat up. Like I said to her, I'm reading the book. I've read the book. And I think she did something for me that day. She shut her mouth and she listened to me. So for 15 minutes of recess, she started with, she said, can you stay? I said, yeah. She sat in her chair at her desk, and I sat down in front of her, and she said to me, why aren't you reading the book? Like, I'm looking at your answers on these comprehension questions, and it's clear you're not reading the book. I said to her, no, I friggin' go home and I read from 5 to 9 p.m. because I'm a slow reader. I've read everything you asked me to read. She's like, well, look at the answers. So then I just start spouting. And I just start talking about what happened in the book. I'm like, then this old man pissed himself, and I'm talking like a teenager. So I'm not talking like the literary English people. I'm like, and then in this chapter, this guy did this, and then this chick responded by saying this to him. And this look on her face was like, he did read it. And I'm like, yeah, I friggin' read it. I told you I read it. I can't answer your friggin' questions because I don't understand your questions. And I don't know how to write the answers, and I don't know how to answer. And so basically, she sees this kid in front of her who's doing the work and just not able to demonstrate the understanding. So I give her credit because I think she backed off and she's like, okay, what do I do for this kid? Because he clearly stressed out of his mind. He's here to get this course because everybody who goes to university in Ontario needs grade 13 English. You can't get in without it. It's the only course you have to apply to most programs. And she's like, he's reading it. He's just not able to show me his comprehension. So things shifted that day. Things shifted in a way that, like, she spent more time asking me questions and having me talk about the book, which I appreciate now, that accommodation, which I didn't know then, because I still kept coming back and I still kept writing her stupid tests and trying to write her the essays she wanted and just like not feeling good. But I think that conversation where she saw, oh my God, this guy is he's like actually putting in the time, but he's just not, there's something missing. So I'm going to accommodate him. And she did. And I got my B plus. And and then that bit of confidence was like, okay, I can do this. I'm getting out of high school. I'm going to go to university. I'm going to do something with my life. And even it was one of those things where even if I got out of university with an arts degree and didn't have work, I was still going to be proud of who I was, that I was able to go and do that. And then whatever happens, happens. If I have to do manual labor for the rest of my life, that's fine. I got a university degree. I was able to do it. I proved to myself and to everybody else that I can learn, that I'm not a bad person. I'm not, useless. And sometimes now, Chris, when I look, maybe I should have done a hands-on job, right? But now the world is open in a different way. I was talking to my buddy Chris his name's Chris, on the hike at the retreat, and he said to me, we talked about this. He's like, we talked about, is teaching where we should be? And I found myself sitting in your seat. I told him, I'm like, maybe not, but what's going to afford me and my family the comfortable life that we're living? Nothing. I don't think I can get out and go. It's because teaching is when you get into teaching, it can be your career for your life. It can, if you want it to. And I know there's not a lot of jobs that offer that anymore, but
Yep.
I found myself talking about all kinds of other things that I could have learned, skills I could have learned, things I could have done that I just didn't. And I don't regret it. I just think that if I wasn't in a job that had such a stability to it, and I do enjoy it, but there are days where I'm like, oh, I don't think I can do this. Like, I think I'm finished here. I don't think I'm being effective anymore. It's very hard to find something else and I have to think of my family. I can't just say, hey, hun, I'm going to resign my position. I'm going to go find a job.
Clocking out.
Yeah, I'm clocking out. No, not happening. Anyway, so thanks for letting me rant on that a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I think, was it fair that my father told me when I was a young boy that I was going to go to university? I don't know. That's how it went. That's how it worked. I know my wife, there was never an option. She was going to university. But I don't think her parents delivered that message to her the same way my dad delivered it to me. And I don't know if it had the same effect because I would see my dad go to work and not come home until he had enough money to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a scary thing. I don't know if I've ever said this on air, but I remember when I was a teenager, I opened the garage door and I saw my dad in the garage and he had taken apart the brakes of the car. And I was mortified because I didn't think my dad knew what he was doing. And he took apart like the safety feature of the vehicle. And I remember thinking, oh my God, my dad just broke the car and he doesn't have money to buy a new car. And how's he going to put this back together? And he did. But it was like anything he could do to save money, he did. And so then I appreciate more that every year I wanted to play hockey. I played hockey. Now, always had hockey equipment, and it was never hand me down. My dad would buy me new equipment. And now, like being the father of a hockey player, I know that it can get expensive. Oh, not get expensive, it is expensive. And wow, like I always focus on the things I didn't have. But when I think about what I did have, my dad gave me a lot for someone that didn't have a lot of money. So that's what I got on that.
I had 200 things that I wanted to say. I think they're all gone. I like the I like getting kind of close up to the how would my life be different kind of conversations. And I think we both have very different paths to sitting here doing this podcast. There's some interesting, you Venn diagram it out. We probably would have, if we were in the same high school, we would have met at some point. I feel like the academic experiences, we would have either been aware of each other or we might have just been, maybe I'm heading into the principal's office as you're coming out of the guidance office. It's like, hey, what's up? Sup? And then you kind of go on with your day. Sup, bro? Yeah. I like unwinding this perception of barriers because I had no clue, no awareness. I was in such a bubble just of this is what I want to do. I never had any measure that it was ever at the cost of anything or was demonstrating anything other than autonomy and decision making. There wasn't a strong conversation. And my dad worked for the bank. My mom worked multi jobs. They both had done their stint in, what would be considered blue collar working. My dad ended up just kind of landing in the bank and staying for that job forever. Smack dab middle class. No real big highs, no big lows. There wasn't vacations every year. When we had money, stuff was a little bit better. When we didn't have money, stuff was a little bit tighter. Like these are kind of, the flow. There was just always something in me to seek independence and my own space. It was the drive to figure out my own thing, even if it wasn't a great thing, even if it wasn't going to be a successful thing. And I think that as far as coming to teaching, well, it also wasn't it wasn't on the radar, nor would I even say that it's my last stop in my career. But it's funny. I don't have a very clear, I never had a thing with my academics or let's say my career, my job. No, sorry, my career within, let's say, learning. Hospitality is a different bag altogether. It always came back to just keep working and work as long as you can. I have to be honest. Like, I think that's even my mantra to this day. Just keep working, work as long as you can. Let's see what happens. Like I have no gilding gold gilding on my diploma. I don't look at it and say, wow, I really worked hard for that. Like, I don't have a sense of that. It was just me continuously working, head down, working. It's a tradesperson kind of mentality, I guess. I don't know necessarily where I get it from. I think the idea to just keep working, probably both my parents worked a lot from my perception, but I thought that's just how the world is. You work a lot, get home for family dinner and you work a lot. That were the two driving rules. And even when I was working at the restaurant, unless my shift started early, I would still try and be family dinner. Like, we did family dinner for when my dad was getting home from work. But you got me thinking about that difference between the perception of what I would be doing through your experience. And I wouldn't have ever been able to connect the dots to that somehow some of the fluidity of my day could be looked at, like, because I always thought that people thought it was just, I was kind of lazy. Like, I was just kind of, like, there was never opportunity. I was never demonstrating. I never thought I was ever demonstrating opportunity or success or balance at all in what I was doing. I was just going to work to make some money. I had no clue that anyone could have or would have even been paying attention to me, apart from, if I decided to skip because I said that I would start at 4 and I knew I had to get home and kind of get my sister back home. It's kind of fascinating.
I would have been watching you.
Yeah, I wouldn't have had that.
Because I was watching all those kids. I felt like I could see potential. And when I saw it being wasted, I was just like, this person's a moron.
Yeah.
They're just like, when I did go to university, I've told you this before, in my second year, I'd be walking down the hall and I'd see somebody from high school. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I didn't know you were here. And they're like, oh, I was at Queens, but I got kicked out. I failed my first year. And I'm just looking at them like, you went to Queens and you flunked your first year because you were too busy partying? And they're like, well, how about you? I'm like, I'm in my second and a half year because I went to summer school after my first year and got 2 credits. They're like, why'd you fail? No, because I wanted to get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
They were baffled. They're like, you wanted to get ahead? It was like both of us staring at each other and looking at each other based on our perceptions from high school. Like, I'm like, you're a genius. You did nothing in high school and you got 90s. Well, I guess that carried on to Queens because you did nothing there and now you're at Carleton. And they're looking at me like, you did nothing in high school and now you're ahead of the game in university? It was that perception, right? It was like, I thought that they had it all and they thought that I had nothing and wanted nothing. And so for me, there was like an unleash. There was like potential unleashed when I got to university. I was a monster. I was just going after it hard. Summer school, nights, days. Put it in front of me and I'm going to break it down and attack it until I do well at it. Courses in my first year where I got like a C, like in sociology. I'm like, I'm never taking another sociology course again. That was boring. I spent half a year and I got a C. That can't happen. I can't do that. And then as I went through school, started getting B's and then A's, then graduate school. Like, I remember being in my 4th year, I was taking a seminar course in legal studies, and I had graduate students in the course. They needed it. There was some weird thing. They were in their master's, but they needed this 4th year course because of the way it was built. It was basically a graduate course by a really cool instructor that called it a 4th year course. So people like me took it. And I remember doing like my presentation and some of the graduate students were impressed. And I was impressed with myself that I was able to go head to head with these people who had already gotten a university degree and I was still working on mine. And there was something there. And I think it was that what you referred to as the blue collar mentality. I put my head down and I went like a bull and I just moved anything in my way to get to where I needed to be, to the point where near the end of my academic career in my master's, I was taking a statistics course with a professor that basically at the University of Ottawa in the counseling program, there were like 4 core professors. and you spent your whole year with them because they're the ones that taught the core courses. And Dr. Smith, who had taught me 2 other courses, was teaching me this course. And I remember getting back an assignment, and I got a B plus. And I called him and I'm like, we need to talk. This is not B plus work. This is A level work. And he was like, really? You know, I'm like, yeah, I'm not satisfied with the B plus. I think you messed up in marking my work. We need to talk about this. He said, okay, come into the office. Let's talk about it. So I came in and I just chewed him out. I said, I don't know what you're doing. You're doing this university thing where you have to grade like the bell curve or whatever. I'm like, sorry, pal, it's not going to work for me. You're going to change this mark because you knocked me here and you knocked me here, and you're just doing it because you can't give me an A because you already gave out your A's. I said, it's not happening. And I came at him like that. And maybe I was a little aggressive, but I think I was respectful, just telling him like, I'm telling you, this is like the end of my master's degree. I'm not getting a B plus in this course. You're bumping that up to an A. I'm getting an A. And I'm not one of those pansies in there that's glued to the book. You know I'm working my tail off. You know I've earned an A. And he sat there and he just looked at me like, is this for real? I'm like, this is for real. I'm coming at you full on until you say no A. And so we talked for like 45 minutes to the point where he's like, okay, I got to go teach this class. And I'm like, we're not done. So either we're continuing tomorrow before class or after class. You pick the time, I'm available, or we finish it now. And he said, okay, listen. He goes, you've made some great points. Let me just consider it. I'm going to go teach my class tomorrow. Can you get to school 20 minutes early? I'm like, I'll be here an hour early like I always am. And he's like, okay, 20 minutes before class, come back, let's talk. So I left, and I made some really tight, close-knit friends, like 4 or 5 people. We were all in the same classes together, and we were all like the same age, and they were females, I was a male, but they all had their partners that they had left to come to school, and I wasn't with Sarah because she was in Waterloo. So we had a lot in common. We worked together, studied together, and they're like, how did it go? And I'm like, well, I gave him the gears, and I'm going to do it again tomorrow, I guess, because he didn't decide. So then the next day I came in and I was ready for him to say, you're getting a B plus. I didn't think he was going to budge, but I felt like I'd done my part. And he said, you made some good points. And he said, you know, I thought about your work and I looked at it again. You could have done this way and you could have done that way. He goes, so I think you're lacking there. But he said the way you presented your argument and like the explanation you gave and the demonstration of like your understanding, he says, I don't feel like giving you an A minus would be like, I don't think I'm buckling there. I think that, you know, you've shown me that you've earned that. So you give me your paper and I'll change the B plus to an A minus. Pull it out of my bag, changes the mark, and I'm like, thank you very much. And then, you know, it was near the end. It was near the end of my master's degree, but to this day, I still have huge respect for him taking the time to listen to me. And when I have a kid come at me to talk about their rubric or whatever, I remember that moment and I let them have their moment. I let them talk and I open my ears and I try to hear what they're saying and gather from it what I can to help them go to the next level. So, you know, I've had those battles with other professors and didn't work. They're like, no, you didn't earn it. I don't agree. But having come to the end of my schooling, my formal schooling, I was like, no way, dude. You're gonna get an ear blast because I knew he was marking strategically, and I'm like, I'm not playing that game. I've played that game all of high school. I'm not playing. And it wasn't I paid so I deserve. It was, you know how hard I've been working in this course. Mm-hmm. You've seen the work I've put forward. For God's sake, I've taken other courses with you. Like, I'm not some newbie here. You know who I am. You know what I do. You know what I'm about. Why are you sticking to the B plus? He never really gave me a true answer, which leads me to believe that he was grading on the curve. He was doing what university people do sometimes. And I was like, I'm not having it. You gave the wrong person the B plus. You should have given it to Joe Blow or John Smith, who would have just said, okay, I've already got my A plus. This isn't going to bring me down. I needed everything to bump up. Anyway, I kept in touch with him when I started teaching. I would send him information about what I was doing, and talking about anti-bullying frameworks in the school board, because his big thing was anti-bullying as a professor. And it was great to talk to him, not being his student, because he'd always be like, this is awesome, you're in the right place. He'd be like, you're a counselor at heart, but it's not going to hurt you in teaching, so just do what you do, be who you are. And it was really good to have that at first. I've lost touch with him, but again, some kids need to hear the impossible, because that's where they're living. There are kids in my class sometimes that say they're going to do this, they're going to do that. I'm like, right on, what can I do to help you? Whereas other people are like, no, that's not going to happen. So why are you thinking it? Why are you going to crush their dreams? There's tons of other people who are going to crush their dreams. I call them crushers. They're out there waiting. They're the ones that see the pop can on the ground, they run to it and they stomp it. That's how those people are built. I prefer not to be one of those people. I prefer to be in the clouds. Hey kid, you want to do this? Right on, let's do it. And then let them try, let them fail, let them live that reality and see what it does to them. I was talking to my wife last night about a topic, and we were both coming at it. She was coming at it from a crushing perspective. I was coming at it from why not? Why not? Which isn't always me. But it was funny because she's like, why are you taking that perspective? And I'm like, because somebody has to. Somebody has to. If it wasn't for dreaming and being in the clouds, I don't know if I'd be here right now. I don't know if I'd be here getting, C's and D's in high school. And if everybody said to me, no, you're not going to survive, you're not making it through academic courses, I don't know, would I have taken them anyway? I don't know. But there were a couple, and my dad included, saying, you're doing it. Come hell or high water, you're going to do it. And then it was a matter, like I told you, but then it was up to me, right? I had to figure out how to make it work. And that doesn't always happen for people. So I'm very, when I do things that other people might consider boring, I feel like honored. I feel like the opportunity's here, and I'm gonna milk this opportunity. I'm gonna be appreciative for it, because it might not come again. So some of the cool things that have happened in my life as a teacher, I'm totally appreciative of the opportunities and that people take time to listen to what I have to say, because not everybody comes from that. Some people don't care about anything because they've always had everything. And I worry about that with my kids. I worry that my kids, like when my kids don't succeed at something, automatically they retreat. And I didn't have that, like in late high school all the way to now. I don't think I retreat. I analyze a situation, then I retreat if I feel like I'm not going to give it what it deserves, or I'm not going to give it the resources it needs. But I am a believer I can do whatever I want. But with that comes time, support, resources, and you have to be realistic about those things. Like, I think I've joked with you, if I wanted to become a medical doctor, I could. But I'd have to quit my job, right? I'd have to take a bunch of courses to get into medical school. And I basically need my wife to say, go for it, do it. While there's chaos all around you, do it. But that's not going to happen. I'm not quitting my job. I don't expect my wife to tell me to take the next 10 years of my life to get into med school, right? So I believe anything's possible, but you have to have the support, the resources. I believe anything's possible.
So, couple things. I'm vibing on how this feeds into a conversation you and I had. I don't know when it was, maybe back in September, where you were observing your students as you were seeing them from their experience, but also at the same time seeing it through your experience. And anyone that wants to check out those combos, I wish I could refer, but you were very clear, and there was a sort of a different way that you were seeing your students this year. You were feeling some connections to not only, I think, from a cultural standpoint, but it was culture, but it was empathy, it was sympathy, it was lived experience, it was sort of seeing them as humans, and the ties that you felt to them and them going through their day at school. I can see how your history, your personal history could play into that. You've also got me, oh, I lost the second part. The second part you had me kind of tripping on was I had a conversation with a grade 12 student this past week where he was saying, you know, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I said, no, not with the information that you have right now. So it's interesting to have a similar conversation, because the kid was really he was not addressing the functional challenge that was in front of him. And I'm not talking about, I'm not a can crusher by any means. I'll exist in that big open space. The student in particular, though, was trying to sell an opportunity that was countering somebody else's conversation, and he wasn't providing the proper support. It was sort of like it was puffed up a little bit. And I forget what it was about. It was about applying to a university where they said the mark to get in for the specific program was in the 80s, and the mark was not there. And the student's response was, well, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I'm like, but you're not really addressing the challenge here. That the fact that the mark is not there and the application is going in the next month, let's hang there. And you can put all your mind to it you want, but if there's stuff under the bridge that you can't fix right now, then we need to talk about what that means, not just applying that positive energy, we're going to get it done. Positive energy, going to get it done, that's going to carry you forward to whatever goal you set. But it can't be accidental. Not at this point. It can't be accidental. We're going to set a plan. We're going to set some motivators. We're going to put your sort of preferred method to get there. And then we're going to stick to that plan. And then, yes, when you believe in that and work towards that plan, you have a higher likelihood that it's going to happen. But it's interesting you talking about setting the mind to it, that you can sort of like, you can achieve these things. I get it. I don't know if it's any different when an adult sort of talks about it to students. And the student was not brokenhearted, was not sad or bothered by my thing, because he still walked away. He's like, no, if I put my mind to it, I can do it. And I just thought, well, time will tell. That's what it comes down to. Time will tell. And if you are building towards a plan, just recognize that the deadline for this plan is in 30 days. If I put my mind to it, I'm like, okay, I know you said that part, if you put your mind to it, but let's put some criteria to it so that your mind and your checklist and your goals can kind of all hang with each other at the same time. I have students, and have had students in the past, that are always surprised that when the line is drawn, when something has to be delivered, that an extension is the automatic response to ill preparedness, as opposed to let's focus on ill preparedness, as in you didn't do the steps. Now, I know I'm taking it into a zone that you weren't talking about, but this is sort of like the parallel experience of that conversation is kind of sparking off some ideas for me. So that's
cool. I didn't know I was going to go down this road.
That's all good. I think it was a good frame. It was a good frame. We both got personal today.
I think people can see, I don't know, how it leaks into the way we teach, who we are. I don't know, maybe not. I think I've gotten softer in my older age. I'm not going after things as hard, but
I'm still waiting for someone to tolerate listening through our, whatever it is now, just under 100 hours of tape, and come and say, wow, I know you so much better now. Or now I get why you're like that. Or now I sort of like, that's why you do what you do.
You know what? One of us should contact the Canadian Space Agency and see if we could launch our podcast out into space when they throw a capsule out there. Aliens will come across it and they'll be like, who are these two people talking to these weird sticks?
Do you know Hadfield?
You got I know. I've met him. I've met him once.
All right.
I don't think I could say I know him.
Maximize that connection, dude.
Hadfield doesn't have time for me.
I know. But he's sweet. He never know. He might find it fascinating. Dude, I gotta go grab some breakfast. I'm realizing.
Why?
Why?
What are you talking about breakfast? I thought we were going till noon today.
Are we pushing through to noon?
You're such a good guy. You're like, whatever, buddy. I'm out. No, it sounds good. I can hear my kids. They're causing some kind of ruckus.
Mine's the opposite.
Oh, so quiet.
I'm not hearing things. And like I said, the 2 little dogs are up there that we're looking after. So I want to go make sure that there's not any messes on the floor.
Oh, yeah. Good luck with that.
Pet ownership, fostering.
Thanks for another good chat. And looking forward to hitting you up again next week.
For sure.
Okay.
Take care, man.
You too. See ya.